Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of Death Space Filling the Void. Last week I was talking about how the bad weather made it easier to talk about death and grief and everything like that. And this week the weather's great. Which is a good reminder that even when things are going well, we should be prepared for when things aren't going as well. Not that you should overwhelm yourself with those or focus on things going bad, but talking about death, grief, dying is healthy. It's good. Grief can be incredibly difficult. And to that end, I have an incredible guest with an incredible story this week. My friend Ralf Jean-Pierre, aka Precious Gorgeous Ralf. He's a rapper, comedian, and an actor. And he joined the podcast to talk about how losing his best friend Tommy a few years ago led to him traveling the country by bicycle, performing Shakespeare in public spaces. It's an incredible story. He explains the motivation behind it, his preparations, and it's just a very inspiring story to live your life with a little less fear. And his perspective is very interesting on God. I mean, I'm a person who, I want to know the answers. I need to know all these answers. And Ralph is okay with not knowing. I wish I could be a little bit more like that. Let's not waste any time. I'm so excited to share this episode. Ralph is a very interesting and thoughtful man, and I think we can all learn a lot from him. So let's go right to Ralph. Enjoy. Now joining me on the podcast is Mr. Ralf Jean-Pierre, who I know from my improv days. We performed improv together. Ralph is an improviser, an actor, a rapper named Precious Gorgeous. You're on the Stoner Morning Show podcast. You wear a lot of hats. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I don't like hats either, which is so funny. Yeah, I've got a lot of things going on. It's strange because it seems like I'm not doing anything. I feel very lazy all the time. But sometimes when I look, I'm sure you go through this too. When I look back at all the things going on, I'm like, why is there so many things?
Right.
And I still feel like I'm just like lagging behind and lethargic.
Our Instagram generation, where you always feel like you're behind, or the fact that you're in a race to begin with is
yeah.
anxiety.
I'm not very competitive. I don't do a lot of, not that I don't do a lot of comparing myself to the people. It's more like there's a project I've been wanting to do with Chatain Bowen for like 3 years, and I've never gotten around to starting it. You know what I mean? Or like little things like that. Like there's always like an idea that I'm like, oh, I gotta get this done, and I don't get to it. And I'm doing other things, so I should cut myself a break. But I still like, I could have started this thing though.
Right. Well, that's exactly what this podcast is for me. Is I'm finally getting to something that has been inspiring to me for some time, and I'm thrilled to actually be putting work in towards it. You know,
how like what this theme itself? Like, why is that? Of all the things you could do a podcast about, what is it about this particular thing that is interesting to you?
It's just something that I think about a lot. How different people view death, how it shapes their everyday lives, how you handle grief, what different religions. I'm interviewing or trying to interview religious leaders of the Buddhist faith, evangelical. I've reached out to several Native American tribes. I want to have as diverse a conversation as I possibly can surrounding death. I just think we don't have the tools collectively, or I think we can improve those tools. And the other thing that draws me to it is that it's just like, in a world that's like feeling really heavy right now, it's not cheap, it's not gimmicky, it's real, it's honest, it's raw. You know, I could probably do a podcast on sandwiches, and hopefully we can do that one day when it's just things are a little bit lighter. But I think you know, right now and for a while, this has been on my mind, and it's just something I've really wanted to explore.
That's beautiful. I don't know why this image popped in my head too, like somebody being at a funeral, like, damn dog, this is a raw ass funeral, man. His funeral is raw right now. Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you is you were open enough to share with me, when we were on an improv team called the Hand Me Downs, that
shout out to the hand-me-downs all
right,
all over the world.
Yeah, a lot
love
of
them and I miss them.
came and went.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, man, for sure.
But yeah, you shared that you had this friend of yours who passed. I don't know this person's name off the top of my head.
His name was Tommy.
Tommy. Okay. And Tommy's passing led to you traveling the country by bike, performing Shakespeare in public squares. And that story has stayed with me. It almost feels very Forrest Gump in that it's just like, here's the thing, and I'm going, I'm jumping at it. So I'd love to hear a little bit about Tommy, your relationship, and then eventually, talk about why performing Shakespeare, and how did you come to that decision?
I was gonna say it also feels very Forrest Gump in that I wasn't very smart, and that I didn't get smarter from doing any of that. But I feel like at the time, let me see. So I knew Tommy from college. We went to college together at the College of Art and Design, and I knew him a little bit there, and we had a lot of mutual friends. But something happened, and I mean, when I look back on it, we only really hung out for like maybe we passed in 2011. I got here in 2007, so it couldn't have been more than 4 years, and really it was more like 3 years, 2 years, 3 years that we were just like hanging out heavy. We were always together. Always hanging out. Like I was always at his house. He had 2 or 3 roommates, really 2 of them that are still like lifelong friends of mine. A couple of them, they're like lifelong friends of mine just because they were his roommates. And because he and we were like brothers. We were so close, and our birthdays were close together, and just our mentalities and when we looked at everything was close together. And we both were never got any girls. We were always chasing girls, and like, it wasn't working out, but we were just like thick as thieves. We were like together in it. And his passing was just sudden. Like, and still to this day, nobody knows what happened. I was like in the midst of like,
really, you don't
one
know
of my first really, like, we know how he died, but we don't know everything about it. So no, it's still a mystery to this day.
Wow.
I was working. I think I had just moved. I was moving from one spot to another spot, and in the interim, I'd stayed at his place for like 2-3 days, like slept on his floor. And they always had people hanging out and staying over. This was, Bushwick in 2011 or Williamsburg.
You're just out of college, so like staying on people's floors is like perfectly all right.
Yeah, that's what we're living that kind of life.
Yeah.
And so I was just moving to a new apartment. I just had like a layover of like 2 days or something. So, and then eventually, the day came for me to move. And I knew that day, like, he just loved having me there. He's like, you don't got to go, man. Stay another day. And I was like, no, man, like, I have a roommate coming in, actually, who's going to share my room it was like a whole thing. So I was like, I just need to be there. So I went, and then I went to work. And this job was exciting because it was one of the first good jobs I had in New York. I was a teaching artist, and I was making decent money. So I'm in, I want to say Bay Ridge or like Bensonhurst or something like that, some southern part of Brooklyn. And I'm like working on my lesson plan with my co-teacher. I'm just about to walk into the class, and I get a call from one of his roommates, and they're like, Tommy fell off the roof. And basically I like kind of freaked out a little bit, and then I went from there, and I just ended up spending like 4 days in Bellevue Hospital, just like every day until after like 4 days of like all of our friends hanging out at the, like all of us congregated there, and we just camped out there for days.
Because he had
the first time
he was
he was like in a coma until they declared him in 3-4 days later, and then that's how he died. And it's just nobody saw it coming at all. He had a roof that was very janky on the top of his building that we would go up on all the time so you could smoke. We were always up there. And he was just, we know that he went up, and then that he, later, I think that night was found in the backyard on the ground. you know, from a position that he could have only fell off from the roof, or nobody knows what happened, how he fell. I think it was rainy and it was slippery, and he might have been drunk, he might not have been, who knows. I'd just seen him a few hours before that. Yeah, so yeah, that's that story, and it was more like revolutionary in my life. It was very sad, but it was more just like, whoa. I just didn't know how to process it. Up until that point, no one really close to me had ever passed.
So like death just like kind of is like knocking on your door for the first time.
Yeah. But I also, it was a strange time because one, everybody's like, oh, you're Tommy's best friend. Is Tommy's best friend. And I suppose I was, you know, I'd be honored to be his best friend. I love them. But yeah, I always felt weird that I didn't know that I was feeling what I was supposed to have been feeling. I don't know.
What do you mean by that?
I feel like this is something I think I learned about myself that I kind of already knew, but I learned about myself at that time, which is that like I walk around, I expect death. I'm not. It's not a rare thought that crosses my mind that like I may not make it to the end of this day, or like someone I love may not make it to the end of this day. It's not a radical thought for me.
So how does that like come into your play like every day? Is that like you stay far away from the subway tracks? Are you like super careful when you're going through your day, or just like the thought is in your head that like, hey, this is a real possibility of something that could happen and has happened in your life?
That is a really great question. I think the way that manifests is in this way. One of the reasons I did that, I ended up taking that bike tour. So this is what led to that. And this has larger implications across my whole life. But basically, I was in college a few years before this, right? Actually, a few years, because it was my senior year of college. I was about to graduate. And so I'm working on my senior show and my senior in the theater program. And so my senior show was a series of like scenes and monologues that I put together. And so I found this new monologue and my teacher, and you have a class, you have to take a whole semester class to build your senior show. Mm-hmm. And so my teacher, Carla, who I'm still friends with today, I'm like, yeah, I got this new monologue. And she's like, where do you want to do it? Pick a part of the room and let's see this monologue. So I look around the room. There's only like 6 of us in the class or something. I look around the room, and it's a big room, and I look, and there's a big, broad, open wall with nothing in front of it. Nobody's standing there, like it's just open and broad, and I just turn and look, and I go, oh, not there. Oh, where else do I want to do it? And then the idea just struck me, and I'll never forget this. I don't think I'll ever forget this. The idea just hit me as I'm looking around again. I go, why not there? Oh, because I'm afraid. And then I realized I have to do it there. I have to stand in front of that wall. And that was the first time that thought hit me. And then after that, and that thought accelerated when I got to New York because of a couple other things. I mean, mainly like, so when I say, this is a big thing. So mainly when I say like Tommy and I never got girls, I don't know what was his impediment. But what I learned was I would meet girls, and like the luck that I would have is that it wasn't often, but some of the time I would realize that a girl that I was interested in was also interested in me. Boom. Especially when you were younger. Yeah, you're like, but what I would do is try to make the move and get in there without having to admit how I felt. Because I was trying to do everything I could to skirt the possibility of making myself vulnerable to rejection.
Oh, okay.
I was just, so basically I was letting my fear rule me. And the women that I was interested in could sniff that out and would become uninterested. And what I realized for myself is that I think it's because I wouldn't make the move. I wouldn't make myself vulnerable. So how that manifested is from that moment of doing that monologue in the class, it made me realize that like, oh, if I'm afraid of something, I need to do it immediately. And not only do I need to do it fast, because if I think about it too long, I'll think myself out of it. Right. So the second I'm afraid of something, I need to do it right then and there. I need to just do it. And so
that's a great way of viewing your life.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if I do that, if I'm as rigid about that now, but it was a couple of years of like wild things. Like, I don't know. I don't think I can jump over this fence. Jump it. You know, like okay. Immediately. And it's very, yeah, it was very. I was a little bit possessed at that time. So, so that kind of ethos or that philosophy culminated in Tommy passed, and I remember. I'll tell you this whole story. So, I'm just thinking about what I learned in that time with Tommy passing. Among many things, is that I'm very project oriented. So if something happens, I feel rudderless if I'm not attached to like a project that I find important that I'm working on, like a piece of art.
Okay.
And so at that time, Tommy passed, and I was just kind of sitting in that grief, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to make in order to deal with it. So I was just kind of like roaming the earth unmoored for a couple months, and that's rare for me. I'm not usually like that. I usually have something that I'm working on or thinking about.
And not just one thing. It seems like you usually have several
many things. Yeah, I don't know why that is. So at that time I had nothing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just looking for an idea. And I remember I moved to my pastor's basement in Bay Ridge, and I'm living in his basement trying to find something, and I was sitting there, and I remember it was the summer of 2011, and I'm sitting there, and I see a commercial come on TV for John Leguizamo's Ghetto Clown. See a commercial come on for that, and I'm thinking,
the one man
that's
show.
Yeah. And I think that's what I've always wanted to do is play a bunch of characters on stage. And after this, so something, one of these things that was leading up to the tour as well is like I was going up for like a year and a half. I was doing stand-up. But what I was doing is I wouldn't write any jokes because I don't really like jokes for myself. I love jokes, but I don't really want to tell them. So I would just go up on stage. I would go to open mics with my stand-up buddies, and I would just go on stage and do one-man improv. I would just improvise. I would never know what I was going to do, and I would just make it up right when I got on stage.
That's very, very brave as an improviser, going to open mic for stand-up and doing something completely different. I'm sure the audience had some strong reactions.
It was rough. Sometimes it went really well, and more often it went badly. But I was just doing it, and I was doing it because it was scary because I was afraid to do it. So there was that. But because of that, I built up this thing of like, I know I can play multiple characters at the same time on stage, and I can make them talk to each other. So I was thinking about that, and then I saw this John Leguizamo thing, and I was like, yeah, that's what I would always want to do. I'd also read this book by this guy Travis D called No Applause, Just Throw Money, which is like the history of vaudeville in New York. I'd also read this other book about my hero, Joseph Papp, who created New York Shakespeare Festival. I just read those books, and I was obsessed with them. And then I saw this commercial for Ghetto Clown, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to perform. I want to do something where I perform different characters, and I want to have my own act that I can just do wherever I want. It was also a time, Tommy had passed, and I'm also just like in these dregs of like, I want to have this career as a New York actor, and it wasn't working out the way I wanted it to work. I couldn't figure out how. I was just in these boxes and stuck, and my friend was gone. And I wasn't sad. I was just like stuck, I wasn't, or I wasn't depressed. I missed my friend, but I was more like, and it was the thing that Tommy and I shared. We were both very like driven, striving, making art. And there was a lot in his passing that was like, okay, I've got to make it for both of us. Since we had such an analogous dream, like I just put him on my back, and sort of like everything I do, I feel like even now I have a girlfriend, and I'm like, man, Tommy would love this, And
Tommy, I did it.
Yeah, he really would. He's like, oh, you gonna see that chick? Yeah, nice. Tommy spoke like he was like a young Christopher Walken the way he was.
Really?
So he's like, we hitting the town, yeah. So I've got all these ideas swimming in my head, and I'm also thinking about like what's portable. What if I was gonna do like a vaudeville act? What's portable that I could do that's like based around acting that is more reliable than improvising? And I thought, well, you know what I think is really portable? Shakespeare. I feel like I could pick up a Shakespeare scene and do it anywhere because they're not built for like scenery or props. They're just built for just two actors to do it.
Right.
And then I think also the thought of like doing a long distance bicycle tour. So all these things are just swimming in my head. And one day I'm just sitting in the chair a different day than the Get a Clown commercial. And I'm just sitting in the chair in the basement in Bay Ridge. And one day the whole idea just falls on me. You're going to ride around the United States on your bicycle and perform Shakespeare on the streets.
And there it is. And it scared you?
I immediately tried to talk myself out of it.
Yeah.
Immediately, I was like, this is a crazy idea. There's no way to do this. I'm not going to do it. And then
it's almost like you're at this point in your life where like trying to talk yourself out of it is like creating this quicksand leading to you doing it.
Exactly.
It's
yeah.
Like repeating that this is scaring you, Ralph. This is scaring you, Ralph. Okay, I got to do it.
This was like, this idea is too crazy. This is too much, Ralph. This is too much. Yeah. And then I just had this vision in my mind. I still don't know to this day where it came from, but I just thought about telling Tommy this idea. And then I'm like, I'm going to leave New York. I'm already behind. I'm going to cut all my contacts for however long this takes. I'm going to go out and who knows if I can die? Who knows if it's even possible to ride around the country this way? Who knows? Like, I had this idea, but it's crazy. It's so far-fetched. And I just imagined him saying, when you leaving?
Oh, man. Let's go. We're going.
And I had to go. And that's how.
What from that moment of like making that decision, I want to hear two things. I want to hear, how does that feel, right? Did you feel like a transition from like you said you weren't feeling depressed, but maybe like grief? Like, is there some sort of transformative aspect to like putting your plans and your dual dreams in motion?
Once I had that feeling, once I had that thought, it was like the fear didn't go anywhere, but there was definitely a resolve. That is, I really can't even explain when I think back on it. It was just like, yeah, I'm doing this. Yeah. And I just kind of became crazed. And then things started opening up for me in ways that were very strange. I ended up making a one-man show about this called What Should Be the Fear? Like that ended up working on for like 6 years after my collaborator Julie helped me put together the original Shakespeare repertoire. We ended up making a one-man show about it. So the story's kind of fresh in my mind. But like what happened was I told Jolie, and her first reaction was like,
wait, who's Jolie?
She's my collaborator. She was like the first person to give me a job in theater in New York, and like we still work together to this day. She's just the greatest, and she was at that point. She gave me my first job in New York, and she was the only person who like would regularly take my meetings. I would be like, I have this idea to do a 3-man St. Joan. I have an idea to do a sketch, blah blah. And then sometimes she would bite, most of the time she wouldn't, but she would always take my meeting. And I really don't know why, because she's way more sensible than I am. And I just be like, I want to do this. And so I do
this. Sometimes it's good to hear the quote unquote more practical side, I guess, to like funnel and mold the clay.
Yeah, I mean, she's just a very practical lady, even though she's also an artist. So I told her this idea, and I remember her being like, yeah, this sounds dangerous. You're a black man. You're going to the South. You're going to ride a bike. And then all this Shakespeare, how are you going to, what? I don't really understand. And then I'm kind of like, I'm still like, okay, she thinks I'm crazy. All right. I'm not sure. Okay, let's keep going. And then I remember she writes me an email like 3 days later, and she goes, hey, Ralph, I was offered this job to direct this play that I've always wanted to direct, and I turned it down. And I didn't understand why I turned it down. And I realized it's because I told her that. She was like, why do you want to do this? And I was like, because I'm afraid to. She was like, that seems reactionary. And I was like, okay. And so later she wrote me this email, and she's like, I was offered to direct this play that I've always wanted to direct, and I turned it down. And the reason I turned it down is because I was afraid to do it. I thought I would fail. We should start working on this project.
Nice.
Yeah. So that happened. The other thing that happened was I took a meeting with the only guy I knew at the time who had done any bike touring. I remember this is a fateful day. I took a meeting with him at Madison Square Park, right over near the pit. I took a meeting with him, and I just was like, hey, bud, I have this idea, and I need to tour my bicycle around the country to do it. Is that humanly possible? And he goes, can I, travel like 60 miles a day? And he's like, yeah, it's not going to be easy, but yeah, you can do it. And I was like, shit. Okay. So then right after he left, I called my mom, who was a very, pretty like conservative personality, like very practical personality,
Right.
like Jolie. And I call her, and, I've never done a bike tour. I've never even left the East Coast. I've, like,
Are you
I've never.
in 60 miles a day bike shape at this point? That
Oh,
sounds like
no. I've never been camping. I don't know anything. I know nothing, my friend. I call my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I am going to ride my bicycle around the United States for the next few months and perform Shakespeare on the street. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. I'm an adult. And then she's like, Ralf, what are you talking about? Why, Ralf? Why you want to do this? And then so we go back and forth, and I'm arguing with
Great
her.
impression of your mom, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah, she's I love doing it. And then finally, I don't know why, so many things that happened on the route to this that made me think that made me, one, like, reaffirms my belief in God, and two, makes me think that Tommy was like with me the whole time. I say to my mom, I'm very big on this. I don't know why. Well, I do know why, actually, because Tommy and I we share the same zodiac, right? We're both Scorpios.
Mm-hmm.
And I share a birthday with Jodie Foster. That'll become important in a second.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm arguing back and forth with my mom, and she's like, "Why, Ralf? Why do you have to do this? Why? I don't understand, Ralf. Why?" And I say, "Oh, sorry." And I say to my mom, I'm in New York, and I'm busting my ass trying to, like, be an actor and prove that I'm good enough and I should get hired to work and blah blah. And whatever I'm doing is not working, and nobody cares. And maybe I need to prove my commitment. I need to go out and do something drastic and big to prove my commitment to my work, and that I'm good, and that I'm here to work, and that I will not be deterred, and whatever it is. And I just am emphatic. And my mom was quiet for a little bit. She goes, "Oh, it's like when that guy tried to kill Reagan for that girl." So she's like referencing the assassination attempt on Reagan in the 80s, which, like, my mom almost never makes. She's not a pop culture referencer or a referencer of history. I've never heard her say anything like this before.
Yeah.
And she says this, right? So John Hinckley tried to shoot Reagan. He was, like, mentally ill, and he had a delusion that, he was supposed to kill John Hinckley to impress this girl. Do you know who that girl was?
Jodie Foster?
Jodie Foster.
I didn't know that, but I guessed. That is very interesting and very bizarre.
It's very bizarre. I had just become aware of that, and I knew that. So I said that to my mom. I said, "Yeah, Mom," and I share a birthday. It was Jodie Foster, and I share a birthday with Jodie Foster. And my mom goes, "Okay."
When do you leave?
Yeah.
Wow. In such a short time period, you had changed her mind on this.
It was like maybe an hour conversation, maybe 45 minutes.
Wow.
And I almost was like, really? This is it? This is it?
That was the final key to unlock to this trip actually happening.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot more. I mean, I had to learn the Shakespeare. We had to figure out what the theme was. The theme ended up being fear for all the scenes, and then
very fitting.
Yeah, I had to learn it, and I had to find them. I didn't have a bicycle. I didn't have a touring bicycle. I didn't have those luggage bag, the panniers that you need. I didn't know. I wasn't in shape. So I had to, like, raise this money. I'm trying to go to, do I need grants or whatever? Get a grant, write a grant. A grant's gonna take at least a year, if not 18 months to get. If I wait 18 months, I'm not going. This is like August. I gotta be on the road February if I'm doing this.
You started in February?
Started in February from Florida.
Okay, from Florida. Okay, I was going to say, all right, I'm getting on my bike here in New York City.
No. I went to Florida where my mom lives.
I just had to slide in here real quick just to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by The Cardist. Okay, it can be really hard to come up with something special to put in every greeting card that you send for birthdays, anniversaries, whatever the occasion. Congratulations, way to go. Because even if you do write something really special that's very moving, then you're going to be known as the special moving card person, always chasing that high mark that you got. Well, have no fear. The Cardist is here to help. With so many birthdays, there's no time to shop for cards. Write the cards and buy the stamps. Now you can do it all right where you sit, because the Cardist Studio does it for you. You're going to come across as a lot smarter. That's always a good thing. Introducing a writing specialist for the message inside your greeting cards. The Cardist Studio creates your message, writes it in the card, and mails it for you. All you do is pick the card and tell why you're sending it. No more errands, no more anxiety. We've all had enough anxiety over the last year. Let's have a little less. And this is for a message from your heart, but not your hands. Just sit back and enjoy your relationships. TheCardistStudio.com, thoughtful just got easy. And you can use the promo code DEATHPOD for 10% off all orders. Speaking of relationships, now that people are getting the vaccine and the numbers of the vaccinated are growing and you can actually start seeing friends, oh my gosh. Such a weight is coming off just to be able to see people. Oh man, so nice. Today's episode is also brought to you by My Software Tutor. Learning new software programs can be extremely daunting. Do you fear the spreadsheet? Phobia be gone. I mean, we all put Excel in our on our resume, but deep down you know that's probably a lie. Or maybe it's not. Maybe you're an Excel whiz, but there's always something else you can learn about it. My Software Tutor offers 3 levels of real-time Zoom-based courses with a live instructor. They all deliver practical, functional business skills in a friendly, supportive environment. These courses will increase your marketability, which I feel like there's going to be a lot more jobs opening up as the pandemic subsides a bit. Whether you're an employee, job seeker, consultant, or contractor, register at mysoftwaretutor.com and use the promo code POD20 to save 20% off all registrations. All right, now let's get right back to Ralph.
I have so many questions, Ralph. How did you plan the route? Where did you get this money? Why isn't this a major motion picture already? Like, the story.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that last question, and I just sort of feel like it'll emerge in its own time. But if it will, I think that there's people who need the story probably have it. Maybe at this point, it'll go where it goes. But the money came from just a Kickstarter. I just did a Kickstarter and I raised $5,000, I think, or maybe $2,500. Maybe that's all I raised. I don't remember. But so I raised the money enough money to get the equipment. I just started riding my bike as much as I could every day. It wasn't really enough, but it was just enough to get used to riding 20, 30 miles.
Mm-hmm.
I bought this bike. I bought all the stuff I needed for it. I had some money left over to leave with. And
what did you do with your New York apartment? You were staying with your pastor at that time. Did you?
Oh, I just moved out. I mean, they didn't really want me living there anyway. So I just left it. I wasn't really leaving much. I didn't have much. Still not much. I didn't have much going on. Nobody's waiting for me. Nobody's looking for me. So I could just go, and it wasn't a big deal. Just went to Florida. I went home for like 2 months, or maybe like 2 months to get ready, and then I started in Tampa, so I went to one of Tommy's roommates moved back to Florida, and she lived in Tampa. Tampa's about 100 miles from where my mom's town is. Mm-hmm. So I made sure to start there so that I'm starting 100 miles away from home.
Yeah.
So that I've not just like I ride 25 miles and I'm like, this is crazy. I'm going back home. I'm not really doing this. Even though I raised all this money and learned the Shakespeare and blah, blah. I just tried my best to put myself in a position where I couldn't turn back.
What's that first mile feel like of pedaling?
I'll tell you exactly how I felt. So, first of all, the first time I rode the bike fully loaded was the moment I left. Okay. I'd never even had the time to load the bike up. I didn't know how to pack it up. And I pack up the bike. You're clipped in. The only reasonable way to get enough out of your strokes to pedal is like you wear these special shoes and you clip into your bicycle.
Yeah, I've seen people wear those.
Yeah, so I got to learn to clip in and out right away with 60 pounds on my back, on my backside.
You didn't practice clipping in at all before that?
Oh, yeah. I practiced.
Okay.
I practiced for about a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So, but not with all the gear on. It occurred to me to do that. So I start riding, and I'm riding down Dale Mabry, I believe, in Tampa. And I get to this bridge. I mean, it's not even as tall as the bridge from like Greenpoint to Long Island City. It's like barely a bridge.
Okay.
Right? I get to this bridge, and I just stop, and I'm just like, oh my God, that bridge is so huge. It's nothing. It's nothing, but I'm just like, it's frozen. I'm like, what am I doing?
Feels like a speed bump. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, now it would be a speed. I go on to climb mountains on my bicycle, but like at the time, I'm just like, ah! And this guy, as I'm standing there, like in an existential crisis, this Mexican dude or Dominican dude on a girl's bicycle comes riding the wrong way against traffic from the other direction, and I'm just like looking at him in awe. And he is riding over, and I stop him, and I go, sir, please. What's over there? What's on the other? And he just goes, I don't know, man. More. And he just keeps riding, and I'm just like, ah! And so I'm like, and then finally I stand there for probably like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then I'm just like, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die today. And I like pedal over, and there's just like a gas station. There's nothing there. I just keep going.
Right.
No, nothing special at all. It's the exact same thing.
But you've crossed that obstacle, and you're on your way at that point.
I'm on my way, dude. And it was just like, I don't remember how, it probably took me, I mean, I ended up encountering some guys and riding with them, which I don't think if I had met them, I kept going. Like, I could tell you tons of stuff about this thing, but I ended up writing for almost a little, not quite a year, probably about 8 months. I ended up writing all together, performing on the streets. I taught myself how to street perform. All this, I went long ways. Like I went across the country, up the country, and halfway back across.
Yeah, what are some of the cities you hit?
Oh, you asked me how to choose my route. I just looked at the cities. I just figured it's winter, and I'll ride into the fall. So it's gonna chase the weather. So I'll be in the south in the winter, and I'll be in the summer. I'll be heading upward, and then by the time it's getting cold again, I should be back to New York.
Okay.
And that's pretty much exactly what I did. So I just hit every city that was in my path. You know, I went from Tampa to Tallahassee, where my sisters were, to Panama City, to, you know, I guess some part of Mississippi, to Houston, to Austin. I think I went to New Orleans. You know, just whatever big city is there, and I'm just going by the cities.
Right.
So I'm just hitting whatever big cities in my path, and I'm just doing like a C shape.
And you're staying in like a tent?
Sometimes I'm in the tent. Sometimes they have this thing called warm showers that is like, it's kind of like couch surfing, but it's for bike people. Sometimes I'm staying with those people. Sometimes I'm in a hotel. Sometimes I'm staying with a friend that I have in town. Any of those options I did. And in the first 2 months, I'm like freaking out about. One time I think I slept in a Salvation Army or a shelter. I think I did that once or twice. And the first few months, I'm like fretting about it. By the last 2-3 months, I'm not even thinking about when I'm sleeping until the sun goes down. I'll figure it out when I get there.
Conquering the fear, just like that wall you were making your first presentation in that class.
Yeah. And I think like in vain with like expecting death. And it's not that I don't consider myself a fearless person at all. I don't like flying. I don't like, you know what I mean? Like I'll do it, but I don't like it. I'm not like a fearless person at all. What happens is if I feel like I have to do something dangerous, and I often do feel like that, I feel like it's important in life, I feel like I just have to make my peace with death. So very often I do that. Very often I just like, okay, I may die right now. And I just make my peace with it. And I do that a lot. And I just try to accept it and then try to be bold in how I'm moving from that point. But I have to do it every time.
What's that? Like weigh you down.
Yeah, I feel like I can. I feel like every bad thing comes from that. I feel like I'm gonna die someday, and I don't mean to sound cavalier about it, but I do think about that. Like a soldier dies, a coward dies 1,000 deaths, and a soldier dies once. You know, So I just try my best, and I fail a lot too. but I just try my best to, like, when I'm moving, be like, is this a move I'd be, if I die doing this, literally or figuratively, if I die doing this, am I gonna? I feel like it's gonna be better to have died doing this than to stay alive and know I didn't do it. I have real evidence of that from every woman that, like, I thought was amazing that I didn't get close to them because I would rather save face and not risk rejection.
Right.
I'd rather not risk rejection and not ever, know if there's going to be reciprocity. I'd rather just live in the unknown than to actually just risk it. I think that
like Schrodinger's cat, it's the thought experiment that in a universe there's a cat in a shoebox, and by opening it determines its fate. So it could be dead or alive in the box, but if you open it and it's dead, it's like the thought is that, like, you may have done something to kill it, or vice versa. And
wow.
by not moving, you're in that state of unknowing, right? And
yeah, you don't ever have to know.
Right.
Yeah, I lived enough of that, and so I've just been determined since then to go, I can't live like that anymore. I'd rather just know. And if I'm gonna die, I'd rather just die than not know. And I've just tried to make my peace with that.
That's a beautiful way to live, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I try it, man. I'm telling you, I'm not some sort of hero. Like, yeah, I'm a human. And like what I mean to say is the thing that I learned is, like, what I thought would happen on that tour is I would burn all fear out of me. I thought I would leave it and never be afraid of anything again. And one of the big things I learned is that that's impossible. That I'm always just as afraid. I'm just more used to being afraid and doing it anyway.
I'm more used uncomfortable.
Yes, but I'm still always afraid. Always.
Man. That's very, very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I'm also interested, you mentioned you believe in God, and I'd love to get your thoughts on religion and what happens to us when we die.
I try not to make it really hard. I think most people would, what I like to say is, I think people would describe me as religious, and that's accurate.
Yeah.
If you called me a Christian, that would be accurate. I was raised in sort of a lot of different kind of faiths, and it moved around a lot, but I think I just ended up calling myself, I'm a Jesus follower. So I'm living a life trying to be like Jesus, basically. I'm trying to do that, trying and failing all the time. But I just think, among other things, they say God is love. I think as far as a man goes, nobody loved better than Jesus could. And I don't think there's anything more important than that. So that's what I'm trying to live up to all the time, and surrendering and asking for God's help in that.
I love how open you are to understanding, like, the flaws of humanity, and that, like, you've come to peace with, like, you're never going to love as well as Jesus did, or you're never going to be fear-free, and you seem to be okay with that. The pursuit of attempting to be perfect is just as good as being perfect, I guess. It seems from my perspective.
Oh yeah, I think the attempt is everything. I think the attempt is really the only point, if a real earnest attempt is, like, so much will come out of that. I think everybody's born with, like, some things they struggle with. There's things that come naturally to you that I'll always struggle with, and vice versa, right? I think that's the case for everybody. Everybody has their set of skills, and I think the one thing I was blessed with is that I don't need to know anything. I'm very okay with not knowing things. I'm very okay with not knowing the answer. I don't need to know. So even the question of, like, what happens after we die, I don't really need to know. I don't feel like it's for me to know. I don't feel like it's my business.
You feel like it's like a waste of your time, maybe, to burden yourself with that question? Or
yeah, I don't think there's ever a way to find out. I mean, if there is, it'll show up, and it'll have nothing to do with me, I presume. I'm just a dude doing improv in Brooklyn. Like, I don't. What do I know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. And I really, for many years now, one of the things I really try to do is not spend any time worrying about something that has nothing to do with me, or is not up to me, or is not in my control. I can't control it, and I'm trying not to think about it. So, like, where do we go after we die? I think I've seen so many things in my life that are too beautiful and too. It's like the way that bike tour came to be. Nothing about that should have worked. Nothing should have worked. You know what I mean? There's no reason, and I feel like there's so many stories like that. Like, I can tell you so many crazy things that happened on that trip that are just like, I don't even understand how and why they happened.
Mm-hmm. And it worked out.
None of it should have worked. Yeah, and it worked out, you know. And so to me, that design is too divine and beautiful for everything to be random. So I sort of just, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, but I don't. Like, something I've been fond of saying is, like, I know it's a fairy tale. I know it's a fairy tale. I know it's silly. I know I can't prove it. I know that it sounds to anybody who has any intellect at all, any sense of skepticism, if they want to debunk that, they could easily do it. And I would be like, yeah, you're right. I don't know. It's stupid.
You know what I mean? Water? Sure. Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah. I can't prove it. I don't need to prove it. I'm choosing to believe it because, you know, we also as humanity as a whole, we know very little anyway. So I also know that it can't be disproven. And I don't need to. To me, it's not about the proving under the actual details of, like, was there a flood? Was there all this shit? Was there? Did the bush burn? Did all that stuff? It doesn't matter to me. To me, it's like more what's behind those stories and, like,
which is
patterns of life,
kindness, stuff like that.
All those things are unimpeachable. Yeah, treat your, you know, I feel like I'm a very simple man, and, like, I do know that in the Bible, somebody's like, Jesus, which is the most important of these laws? There's so many laws in this book. God damn. What am I supposed to do? And Jesus was like, listen, just love God and love your brother as you love yourself. If you do that, everything's taken care of. And so for me, I'm like, oh, I can remember those. I can try to do those. And those two things to me seem, I can't impeach either of them. There's nothing I could say about those that are, like, wrong or unethical or not fruitful in any way. Like, it seems to me to make perfect sense that if you can risk enough to give everything to take care of your brother and your sister, that there have to be other people in the world who will also look after you that same way. And then
I would hope so, right?
Yeah, and then so, I mean, I've seen it. I've lived it. So many people have looked after me and taken care of me when they didn't have to at all. So I've seen it, and not said that I always do that. It's just something I'm trying to do. It's the reason it's so beautiful is because it's so hard to do. It's so hard to, like, surrender. Yeah, to, like, completely disavow your primal sense of self-preservation, and, like, I want the food, I want the car, I want the job, I want the girl, I want to win. I'm, to, like, it's so, that is so, has such a grasp on us.
Right. With everything going on, like, everything about our society teaches us to do that, to seek more. I need bigger. I need everything. Like, I need the gravity pull of everything towards me, but to let go of that is pretty important.
Yeah. If you can let go of that, I mean, and then basically what that means is if you can let go of that, it means it doesn't mean that you don't have fear. It means that you're not allowed fear to have any power over you.
You just you're flipping the script. Well, I just wanted to end on one question. You have gone through so much. We only spoke about the loss of your friend Tommy, and you went on this incredible journey. To a person that's just getting started on the road to, in terms of grief or loss, if you had to offer them a couple sentences of advice, what would you say?
I would have to know what their mentality is, because there's so many ways to take it. Like even between me and I have 3 younger sisters, and my mom passed 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Even thank you. And so even amongst them, or even amongst like obviously the way Tommy's parents took his death and the way I took his death was different. The way my sisters took my mom's death, I think we had pretty distinct reactions to it, each of us. And so I'd have to know the person's temperament and where they're coming from and how they're seeing it. But the main things I would say is like, just in general in life, try to orient your mind toward things you can control and nothing else, and try to learn to accept what you cannot control. That is so much easier said than done, but I think it's one of the keys to happiness is accept what you can't control and let go of what you can. And that all depends on what you believe in, because I also believe that, you know, God could do anything. I try not to put boundaries on what I believe that God can do or not. And what that also means is that, like, I have to imagine that the things I'm asking him to do, I may be thinking very small, and God may be thinking on a celestial level that I can't see. You know, when he takes my friend away from me and my mom away from me, there may be some reason that I'll never understand that he's doing that. So that also goes into acceptance. It's like, it's not just that I can do nothing and my God can do nothing, but like I may just be too small to understand the bigger picture. So I really push acceptance. And what I've tried to do, I feel like with each person that I lose until I eventually myself go one day, which is a very scary thought, is I try, if there are people that I loved and that love me, I try as best I can in my own way to every day be the person I believe they would hope that I would be in their purest form. So like I try to be the person that I think my mom would be if she was free of any insecurities, free of any fear, from where she is now. You know, I believe in heaven, like looking down on me from a place of like wholeness and being fulfilled. What would she want? What would she hope that Ralph does with the rest of his life? And I try to be that.
Wow.
And the same with Tommy. I feel like Tommy always wanted what he wanted for himself, he wanted for me, and I think our dreams were very similar. So I just try every day to be earnest and be kind, but be passionate about pushing toward that every day as best I can.
Control what you can control and take a breath about the things that you can't.
Yeah, and then just try to be just try to make that person proud. If you love them, as best as you can without making yourself miserable, I'd say try to make that person proud. That gives me a lot of comfort when I'm like, okay, I think they would be happy that I'm doing this.
Well, this has all been very incredible. You're a very intelligent and thoughtful person. So thank you very much
Tell that to my dad.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said that.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time, Ralph.
I appreciate you, Pat. This is awesome. This is such a cool idea, and yeah, I'm sure this will be helpful for people, and God bless anybody who's dealing with any grief or out there. God bless you. God bless you, Pat. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh man, what an episode. What a story. I still don't know how it's not a movie. It really should be. So Ralph has done a one-man show about it, so hopefully that'll get picked back up now that stages could open up and we can see theater again. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to check the show out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Death Space Filling the Void. My personal social media is all at Patrick_E_Jones. If you're liking the show, please rate and review it. It's really helpful to help spread awareness about the show. I also have another podcast called That Gives Me Anxiety, where each episode is about something specific that scares us. So I've done flying, becoming a parent, birds. And then we talk about it, and towards the end, we hope that it's a little less scary, whatever the thing is. Thanks again so much for listening. It means a lot to me. And I'll talk to you again next Thursday. Bye-bye.